Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to my Wild Hunter. And today guys, we have a lot of updates to actually go through on this character. I've done a lot over the last week or so, and we didn't even have any star forcing events since the 30% off, and I'm having a lot of fun with this Wild Hunter because there's just so many different ways for this character to get stronger at the moment. To start off, I'm going to show you guys a few things that have just been kind of ridiculous with this character. As you guys can see by my EXP bar, I'm just about to hit level 264, and this is because I've been spending a lot of time training in Cernium. The main map that I've been training on have been these Royal Libraries. I think that these maps are just very good for my class to AFK in, and I think I've showed this on stream a few times already. I basically just place down my summons and I can clear the map pretty comfortably, and because of that I have found myself training here quite a lot, more than I actually expected because of how easy it is, and because of that I am farming a lot of familiar cards, and familiars are just something that I've been working on for a while. As you guys can see here, I have about 25 or so unique fams, and a lot of these were prepped when I was training in Moonbridge. I transferred a lot of my Xenon's familiars across to be able to do this, and I managed to actually hit two amazing fams. The first one is this insane 40% boss damage fam. Boss damage fams are incredibly hard to come by. I know on my Xenon series I showed that class getting 3 boss familiars, and now this is my 4th one on this account. This time actually high rolling into a 40% as opposed to the low roll that my Xenon got on 20%. But this is a ridiculous familiar to get. I am basically, in my opinion, done with familiars. This 40% is so lucky that I don't feel like I need to keep grinding for boss fams. At this point, if I get any extra boss familiars or anything useful, it's just a huge bonus, and this is so lucky to get on this character. I already had a bunch of IED fams, and now I have a mix of boss damage and IED fams that I can use to boss with. It doesn't require us to upgrade any items. I just got lucky on the familiar open, so yeah, this is the biggest upgrade on this account that I could have got for basically for free. This puts me on at least 2 30% IED fams and this 40% boss damage fam, which is pretty incredible. And just to round things off, I did mention that I hit 2 different familiars. One of the more useful lines in my opinion on these unique lines is actually the HP line. As you guys can see, this is an example of a large HP fam, and I really wanted these because it heals both my HP and also my party members. Because I am trying to do as many bosses as soon as possible, it does include bosses like Hard V Healer, and these large HP fams are pretty useful. It keeps you alive, keeps your party members alive, it just makes the run a little bit smoother. My Wild Hunter is actually the first character on my account that has large HP fams for parties, so I'm very, very happy with that. And as I was rolling for these, I managed to hit a large HP fam with large item drop. This is such a ridiculous familiar because item drop you can only get from the epic line if I'm not mistaken, so it had to be the second line on the familiar to get large item drop rate. Usually what you would try to do to try to get this large drop rate is to get a bunch of epics, and that was kind of my plan. I was planning to finish up all of my uniques, and you can see I'm actually onto my last one right here. This is my last epic I have on this character, and once this was done I was planning on going back to make some more uniques to go for this large drop rate, but I happened to get it on this familiar with a HP line, so this is just an incredible amount of luck on this character already on these familiars. This is something that I cannot ever complain about. Just 2 insane familiars done, 40% boss damage, and a large drop that happens to be a large HP fam. So even though I have 2 IED familiars that I can run in my bossing setup, currently what I'm using is just 1 IED fam, the boss familiar that I showed, and I'm also using this large drop. This makes it so that I don't even need to worry about my familiars for the time being. I am technically losing damage for not using a 30% IED instead of this large drop, but I think that the large HP is pretty useful on some of the bosses, and not having to swap fams is kind of nice as well. Another thing that I wanted to show you guys is actually my Hard Lotus attempts. This character is actually pretty strong. At the end of the last part, I showed you guys that I was able to almost clear Hard Lotus. I had a 28-minute run where I died out, and unfortunately I wasn't able to replicate that success, and I didn't clear for that week. I just cleared normal Lotus, and on this current week I decided to try the new Hard Lotus. If you guys don't know, Hard Lotus actually got a revamp where the boss basically completely changed. And I kind of ran into the boss not really knowing what to expect. I didn't really know the mechanics too well, but it was kind of fun. I think the new version of the boss is a lot fairer. The HP spread between the phases is a lot more even as well, so you don't have to spend so much time in one difficult phase. You spend an equal amount of time in 3 equally difficult phases. I will say though that the last phase does have a lot of visual clutter. There's a lot of red lines and orange lines flying around everywhere, and there's so many things that are chasing after you, and it definitely affected my bossing attempts. I, again, am very new to the new Hard Lotus. I didn't really have much to go off of other than some brief comments from my chat, more or less going into the boss blind, and I died out of the boss like 2 or 3 different times on stream. The runs were relatively okay. I think we made some pretty good attempts at the boss. What it kind of came down to was mostly I died out to inexperience more than anything else. I definitely have the damage on my Wild Hunter. So what I decided to do was try to do my other bosses first and make some gains, and then come back for the Hard Lotus clear before the reset. When it came to bossing this week, we had a pretty good week in terms of drops. I went through a lot of the arcane bosses, and I also went through Chaos Slime. The biggest thing that I was worried about was actually the damage required to do a lot of these bosses, in particular Hard V Healer and Sea Slime. Hard V Healer just has a really big HP bar, and Sea Slime constantly heals, and realistically I didn't want to keep my party member in the boss for too long. And thanks to all the upgrades that we made over the last event during the 30% off, we managed to gain, I think, about 15 or so stars that gave us attack, so it was an incredible amount of damage gained. I also worked a lot on my Hexa Matrix now that I have my 6th job unlocked, so that made things a lot easier, especially because of the Origin skill and the Mastery. I put a lot of points into them, and thanks to that we actually managed to get a pretty comfortable Hard V Healer clear. And honestly, also pretty much all the other bosses that I'm going to show you guys, we managed to get blue or green dot pretty comfortably. And because of that, we got a bunch of awesome drops. As I said, from V Healer, we managed to actually get a Daybreak Pendant. The Daybreak is a bit of a funny item because it's not as good as the Dom Pendant actually in terms of its base stats, but it is a nice set bonus. As you guys can see here, it's part of the Dawn boss set, and I'll show you guys the other drops I've gotten. It does play with this Daybreak a little bit, and I kind of want to see if I can make this work, although I don't have many spares, and again, this is going to be something that I'm going to have issues with my account. But anyway, let's have a look at the other drops. From Sea Gloom, it was a very comfortable run as well. We managed to actually get an Estella earring. Currently, my account is just using the Hard Healer earring, the drop earring that I have that I farm with as damage gear, so this Estella earring will be a pretty nice placeholder for the time being. And once I eventually get my Superior earring, I will change my Estella earring into drop gear. So this is a pretty nice upgrade, just overall extra damage. From Hard Will and Hard Lucid, I managed to get a Twilight Mark, just one from Hard Lucid I believe. We didn't get anything from Hard Will. No arcane boxes this week, but I think that's okay, given the fact that I don't really have any spares, and I do have some ideas for some upgrades that don't involve arcanes, so I'm pretty okay not getting any arcane boxes at the moment. And just to round things off, from Chaos Slime, I managed to get the Slime Ring. So from this week, we actually managed to hit 4 out of 4 of the Dawn set. And that allows us to do some pretty interesting things with this character. Given the fact that I don't have a lot of these random spares, I don't have Superior earrings either. As I mentioned, I do have this Estella earring that I got from Gloom. I upgraded it a little bit. You can see here it has a reasonable flame, and it managed to actually hit 3 lines on the unique tier. So very, very usable for us. This is a lot better than what I was using previously, which is, as I said, the healer earrings. They were just meso gear, and yeah, this gives us a pretty good amount of range here. For our Twilight Mark, we already had one, so now we have at least 1 spare, which is pretty interesting. I'm not really sure what my upgrade plans are with this item just yet, but I'll go through that in a second. I do have a Dominate Pendant, and I do have a spare for it, which is kind of nice. And of course, we have a Daybreak Pendant as well. And for our last drop, we have this Slime Ring, which I upgraded a little bit to 16. As you can see, all of these items are currently at 16. And yeah, they're just basically replacing a lot of items that didn't really do too much. I replaced, for example, this Treasure John Hunter Ring. It doesn't really give much damage, and the Slime Ring is a lot better. As for this second pendant, I do have a Superior Golix pendant, which is kind of nice. I am slowly working towards the rest of the Superior set. As you guys can see here, I have 124 coins. Hopefully we'll get there to buy our last piece, and by the time that we get our last piece, the ring, hopefully we also get an earring drop. Overall, there's a lot of items that I'm currently working on. Everything's kind of all over the place, and I don't really have a clear plan in mind. And that is kind of what I want to spend a little bit of time on this video talking about, just what my next gains are going to be. The first thing I need to talk about is actually my arcanes. I do have a lot of droplets. I have 12 of each of these here. So I do have the option of buying some armor pieces, in particular the gloves from the Lucid shop. If I do decide to buy the arcane glove, it does cost us 12 of these coins, which is about 110 or so droplets. It is a pretty good gain. You can see the base stats are quite a lot better, and of course it lets us access the arcane set. So once we do get an arcane weapon, this glove becomes a lot better. But the main issue that I have at the moment is that that glove will at most get to 17 stars. Unless I get a bunch of armor drops from the bosses, which is currently not happening on this character, I don't think I'll be able to push the glove past 17. And my main goal right now is to try to do as many bosses as possible solo. And at the moment, I don't have that much space to actually Star Force my gear. A lot of the gear that I have pushed either have a lot of spares like my CRA, or I have foddered somehow into my Absolab gear. And what I'm kind of alluding to is the fact that I think it might be worthwhile me for the time being not accessing the arcane set, just because the spares are just not going to be there. It's going to be really difficult for me to push the stars. So I think for my Wild Hunter, I'm going to actually try to also fodder into these gloves. Now thankfully for me, the gloves do have a very accessible fodder. We can buy them, I believe, from this Magnus shop. I have almost 20 spares of these gloves, and I will probably try to get these to 21 and get our Absolab glove to 20. Kind of the same way that I worked on the other items here. And the 20-star glove is not the greatest thing to go for. I don't really like going for temporary gear, but just being spares gated is quite difficult to push stars, and this is just a convenient star to try to go for. As for the weapon, I am not really sure what I want to do. I would like to also try to push stars on this weapon, but again, I think it's probably better to go for an arcane. But because I am kind of committing towards these Abso gear, I think it will be kind of hard to work a arcane weapon into my set. Unless I replace my hat with an Absolab hat, which is an idea. It's not great though, because I think you definitely prefer the CRA gear. It is more or less permanent for my character, so I don't really want to make Abso gear, which I'll just replace back again with my CRA. So there is a real chance I also upgrade my Abso weapon. I do have a few spares. I'm going to try to do Ranmaru a few times to see what I want to do with the weapon. So he does drop level 150 items. And we also, of course, have CRA. We can buy the Fafnir weapon. The only issue is we don't have that many spares of this. We do require 15 tokens instead of the usual 5 to get this Fafnir item. It's just mostly a spares issue for me. I don't have a lot of spare items that I can go for. On the 5, 10, 15, the event that we're going to have very soon, I think I'm just basically going to be pushing most of my items to 17, like this Slime Ring, this Karnish Treasure, and this Twilight Mark. That way we'll get some pretty consistent gains. What I would like to do though is try to get some more stars, and I have decided on some pretty greedy ways to try to get stars. Greedy but safe ways to try to get stars. It will involve putting a lot of items at risk, but hopefully we'll be able to get some gains out of it. And that is basically me trying to roulette as many items as possible. Typically what you would do is that you would try to get 1 star per item first and then move on to the next one. That way you can kind of save your gains. But my version of rouletting is going to be a little bit different because I just don't have spares. But at the same time, my items are not very good. This Twilight Mark, for example, has a reasonable flame and a reasonable pot. Because I have 1 Twilight Mark spare, I'm going to try to roulette between these 2 Twilight Marks. So I'm going to try to get this Twilight Mark to 17, and then this one to 17, and then 18, 18, 19, 19. Something like that. This way, I'll be able to conserve as many stars as possible. It will cost a lot more because I'm basically doubling the items that I'm going to be safeguarding. But I think this is going to be the easiest way for me to try to push for stars. And it's also going to be the most high roll way. If I happen to get lucky, I might end up with multiple 21-star Twilight Marks, for example. I'll be doing something similar with the Daybreaks and the Dominator pendants as well. I would really like to use this Daybreak pendant because in this current configuration, I do get the 4-set bonus if I wear the Daybreak. But my current Daybreak pendant, of course, is not as good as my current Dominator pendant. And we also don't really know how far these pendants will go in terms of their Star Force. So on the 5, 10, 15, we'll have a lot of items we're going to try to tap. I basically have 6 or 7 items to tap past 17, not including my weapon and my gloves. There are definitely gains to be made, but it is very difficult for me because of my lack of spares. Anyway, that's enough talking about the 5, 10, 15 prep. I do want to show you guys what my current damage is with all the gear that I have at the moment, thanks to all these new drops, and of course our new Superior Pendant as well. With all my links and legions configured, you guys can see here I am at 20.5 mil combat power. And if we add on top of that our bossing fam as well, we are sitting at almost 23 mil combat power, which is an insane jump in damage. I think at the end of the last part, I was at 17 mil, so we've gained basically 5 mil combat power. And of course, I couldn't do all these gains without making another attempt at Hard Lotus. I felt very comfortable now that I've made a lot of improvements on my damage. I have also made a decent amount of improvements on my Hexa Matrix. And of course, given the fact that I've run the boss a few more times, I did have a better idea of how the boss worked. And in this particular clear, we did manage to get into P3 with a lot of lives. So I was pretty comfortable with the boss, getting a lot more familiar with how to dodge things, what things actually do a lot of damage, what I actually have to dodge. Again, a lot of visual clutter in this boss. And thanks to that, I was actually managed to get a Hard Lotus clear pretty comfortable. It was getting a little bit dicey towards the end, but that was just because I was still learning the third phase of the boss. The first two phases I'm a lot more comfortable with, but phase 3, again, just a lot of things happening at the same time. A lot of things that can stun you and knock you around, and just being annoying in general. I think it'll only get easier from now. I am getting more familiar with the boss, and unlike the old version of Hard Lotus, this one is a lot fairer, so even though I'm in the boss for quite a long time, it's not going to be as miserable as the old Lotus. And with that, guys, I think that'll be it for today. We've made a lot of progress, like I said, on the character. We got a lot of new drops. No arcanes, but that is okay, I think, for the time being, because if I want to try to push damage, I think pushing the Absols makes a little bit more sense due to the fact that I can easily get a lot of spares of it. And now that I'm actually clearing Hard Lotus, I will actually be able to straight up get the boxes as well. And hopefully by the time that we get the 5, 10, 15, I'll be able to push for some new bosses. The Hard Lotus attempt took me about 20 minutes, so I'm not that far away from being able to attempt Hard Damien. I only did normal Damien this week because I wasn't confident in my damage. Usually you would want a 15-minute Hard Lotus to be able to do a long clear on Damien. So after the 5, 10, 15, if we get some more stars, a Hard Damien clear is more than possible. And perhaps too, if we get really lucky on the event, we might be able to push for some other bosses solo, including a Chaos Gloom and even maybe a Hard Wheel clear. Again, we're very dependent on how the Star Forcing event goes and how lucky these accessories are. I do not have that many spares, like I said, but if we take the greedy but expensive route of trying to roulette everything, trying to Star Force multiple of the same copies, maybe we can make a lot of gains. Until then though, guys, thank you all for watching. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying my Wild Hunter series so far. I'm really looking forward to the next part because I believe this character is going to make a lot of gains, and I can't wait to share this journey with you guys. Thank you guys again, take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.